Hi, good morning or
Good
afternoon.
morning.
Good,
Actually, almost
good,
afternoon here.
almost afternoon, almost.
Yes.
Hello, and
I'm
Adrian,
I'm only
Adriana.
able to be on sadly for just a little bit. I have to go prepare for our faculty senate 6 hour long
Yes.
retreat.
Oh, that is torture.
Oh my
I think
goodness.
it's going to actually be it really really good. And let me move so I actually am looking at your guys' faces. There we go.
Oh, I
Um,
have to put my camera on. Yeah, there we go. There we
No,
go.
I think it's going to be really important because we're really trying to make sure that the faculty senate sort of is re-bolstered into a real genuinely functional group of faculty with a shared vision and a shared understanding of their responsibilities as faculty senators, especially coming off the pandemic and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you saw my email, and I said I'm available, whatever I can do to help, or what if y'all need me to ever come present anything, or
Yeah, and I know that, so that's one of our goals today in our meeting is to sort of evaluate what our goals of faculty senate is. And I know that in the past we had some email conversations about when y'all can come and what types of things we'd want you to share and the timing and stuff like that. So, and I think it definitely helps that both Leonard and I are on the
URC.
URC. Yeah. Let
Yeah.
me shut my door for a second.
Okay. All right. So, sorry, I just want to catch Megan while she was here. She says she has to leave, and so I had trying to do other business too. I'm multitasking, right? As many of us are all used to doing. So welcome everyone. Welcome. This is the first time we're doing a panel, and specifically around the HERS development program, and the experience. And so I want to welcome everybody. I'm going to just look real quick. We still have a few minutes, so I'm going to not get started too quick, right?
Right, yeah, because I was gonna say it's 11:55, so we
Yeah.
have a few more minutes, and I don't think Jenny is on yet.
Yeah, well, I got to have my panel here, right?
Hard to have a panel conversation without a panel, so.
Yeah, because I am not a HERS graduate, so I would not be able to talk about it at all. Hey, Deborah's here. She's one of our panelists. Dean Feeks.
Hello.
And we want to have Jenny, and we also Jenny is taking the place of Casey. Casey is having some well, she's just out of pocket. Let's put it that way. And I think she's in in a painful situation, and with her braces. And so we wish her well. And I know when you have a toothache, I don't know if any of y'all have had a toothache, and it's like the most
Miserable.
aggravating type pain. Um,
And hers is much more than a toothache.
Oh yeah, much more than a toothache, probably 100 times worse than a toothache. So anyway, so we appreciate her willingness to help us and be on the panel, but she had to decline, and so Jenny Moore graciously agreed to fill in for her. So we're looking forward to that. And then we have Jenny. And we have Lori Webb, and I don't see Lori on yet. I'm going to look at my people list. Yeah, I don't see Lori on yet either.
And then Dr. Lewis, I think. Yeah. Wasn't
Oh, it's
Amy?
Dr. Lewis. Our flyer just has 3 members.
Oh, there's Lori.
Maybe it did. Jacob,
Lori?
Hi, Lori. Dr. Webb. Okay,
Hi.
so we've got 2 of our panelists for sure, and then Jacob. Am I wrong? Would our 3 panelists originally were Casey, Deborah, and Lori?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Great.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was thinking Amy was as well. But good.
So we're just waiting on Jenny then.
Yeah. And Jenny was originally going to be our facilitator. And since she graciously agreed to step in as a panelist, I graciously agreed to be the facilitator. So, hey, it's a team effort.
Jenny.
Yay, yay, Jenny. So Jenny's here with us too. Very happy. We got all our panelists. So, and then y'all are going to depend upon me to keep it running well. I hope I do my job. I'll try anyway.
We have faith in you.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people, this kind of stuff is not my, my go-to stuff. My go-to stuff is put me in a room with my spreadsheets and my things like that, and reviewing other people's spreadsheets and, problem solving. Those are my go-to things. And so this kind of stuff is not my go-to.
I'm with you.
Adriana, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good.
Yes. We
I'm
can
used
hear
to
you.
Zoom, so it took me a few minutes to find my Microsoft Teams mic, but I'm good. Okay.
Well, I'm so happy we have with us today, it looks like a good group. And hopefully a few more people will show up. Okay, that's my bell. It's 12 o'clock. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started and people can join us, but we have our panelists and I'm ready to go. So I'd like to just open up the meeting. I guess it is our official first meeting of the fall semester for our Women at Work, although we had a very lovely social hour. And if any of y'all got to join us, I'm happy that y'all did. And I think based upon the attendance that we're going to try to keep doing that. We specifically earmarked it for faculty coming back and welcoming, and we want our Women at Work to also explore more opportunities for faculty professional development and development. So anyway, so this is our first event for the year, and we're deciding to have it as a panel discussion. And I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and I'll give you a moment after I introduce you to say anything you'd like to say about yourself to help the group get to know you better. So I'll start with Dean Feeks. So Dean is Deborah is our Dean for our College of Arts and Sciences. I believe Deborah has been with us for 2 years. Am I right? A little over
That's
2
correct.
years? I think
No,
it came in summer of 20.
September 1st is my anniversary. So 5 days.
September 1st. And then prior to being with the university, she was dean of the, and so I hope I don't butcher this name, Shaheen College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Indianapolis prior to this appointment. And you were there you were dean 2 years?
2 years there, yes.
And I know you also were at Texas State at some point in your career as well. So anyway, so you participated in the HERS program in 2017.
Correct. In Denver.
Anything else you want to add so the participants know?
Just as an enticement, I think for the HERS, I would say that if you think about those dates that you just talked about, right? I went to HERS and then I got my first deanship. And I think that says a lot about what HERS can do for your career. So it was life-changing for me.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so then our next panelist that I'm going to introduce is Jenny Moore. And so Jenny, as I said, she was going to be our facilitator. So I don't have a lot written up about you. So Jenny, you're going to have to tell more. But Jenny Moore is with the university and she's a clinical professor. and also the Director of Student Media Communications Program. And Jenny, I think you've been with the university, is it close to 10 years?
This is my 12th year at the
12th year.
university.
Okay, so see, I was undercutting you.
Yeah.
So 12 years with the university. So tell anything else you'd like the participants to know about you?
Sure. I think I'm the most recent participant of hers. I spent almost 2 weeks at the Colorado School of Mines. It really was a transformative experience. I'm still sort of navigating where it might lead me. I was one of the few people, director level faculty members, who had a really keen interest in fundraising. I'm a self-taught grant writer, but I spent a significant amount of time at hers this past summer talking with leaders in fundraising and advancement, which is one of my interests and where I think I'm headed. So it was really beneficial to me.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so Dr. Webb, Lori Webb. So hold on, I'm just trying to be organized. And I'm trying to find your papers that I have for you. So I know you're in their college. You are a department chair in the College of Education, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my little papers. So here I'm not so organized. Thought
I can just
was.
introduce myself if you want, Kathy.
Oh, okay,
So,
introduce yourself.
so-
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. So I'm the assistant dean in the College of Education and Human Development for academics.
Yeah, I got it
And
totally wrong.
no, that's all right. I was department chair for 4 years before that. So before last year. So this is my second year as assistant dean. I attended hers in Bryn Mawr in 2017. And I believe I was the first, I know I was the first after Matson came. I think I was the first that attended, that was sponsored by A&M San Antonio. There were other people that have been like Amy Lewis, but they went from, a different institution. So, yeah, so I, like Deborah, except hers was dean, my first position as department chair was when I came back from hers. So I actually accepted the position as department chair that spring for CNI. And then went to the institution, hers institute that summer in 2017. But it was right at the cusp of me kind of going into administration at that point. So.
Okay.
Oh, and I've been here since 2010, so just a little bit longer, I think, than Jenny, or we might have started around the same time. But yeah, I came to A&M San Antonio in 2010.
Okay, yeah, so over 12 years.
We're like
Okay.
the mortar in the walls.
Okay, I'm going to just, so everyone, so some of the how we're going to do this panel discussion is I'm going to ask some questions. And then at the very end, we'll save some time for Q&As. So if you'll, and I think just about everybody seems to be muted on the participants. And so again, thank everybody for coming. So the first question is, who do you think is a good fit for the HERS experience? And I'm going to jump around and asking the question, and I'll ask Jenny, being the most recent HERS participant.
That's a good question. I really would like this to be beneficial to all of our prospective applicants. I'm really glad that there's a number of people here. And I know you'll have your own questions, but I was very happily surprised when I landed at HERS that there were women who were laddering up into AVP positions, who were really invested in provost and president positions, and that there were women like me who were at the director level. I'm clinical faculty, so obviously I'm not laddering up into a higher level position like that because I don't have the PhD, but I'm very interested and have a lot of experience in university leadership. And as I mentioned before, I'm really interested in university advancement, as I've brought a lot of money into the university. So that's been my trajectory. I think the key quality is your interest in participating in leadership in your institution and a keen interest in your own professional development to figure out what university across the nation or internationally might be a really good fit for you. There was so much momentum at HERS in terms of where women might be going next. So I think that a really solid interest in your own personal growth and how you can contribute to higher education makes a really strong candidate.
So Deborah, would you like to add anything to that or anything different?
Jenny said it great. I actually agree with all of those things. I will say that one of the things that I thought intriguing when I was at HERS was that there were people, they were all genuinely interested, as Jenny was saying, but honestly, some people left and said, yeah, that's not for me. I don't want to do that. I'm right. But I think it gave everyone who participated insights into what they needed to know, what they knew, what they could develop, right? I mean, it was very broad in that sense. And so I think it helped people kind of figure out if that was the pathway that they wanted to go, as well as figuring out if they wanted to go in that pathway, how to do it. Does that make sense? So I think you have to have the interest, but it might help define your interest as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Lori, would you like to add anything?
Yeah,
Good fit.
Sure. I agree with both of them for sure. I think that in addition to what Jenny and Deborah have already mentioned, is the idea that it doesn't have to be that you want a trajectory going up. It could be that it's a lateral move, and maybe it's a move that you learn that you want to move from a teaching institute of 6,000 students to maybe an R1 eventually, and how you might get there in the same position you are in right now. It's not about necessarily the position, but just where do you want to go, which they have already mentioned. I think the big thing, and I experienced the same thing Deborah did, that there were some people that walked away that they were excited through the whole work in the whole 2 weeks, and they participated, but at the end they were like, I learned that I really don't want this next position I thought I might, or I'm just going to take pieces back. But the pieces that we learned and the foci was things that anybody could benefit and bring back to benefit the university or the college that they work in, like inclusive excellence and leading change. All of those things you don't have to be an administrator to do. You can definitely participate. But I want to say the one big thing that came out of it for me and several others, and we still, my cohort still keeps in contact through Facebook and text messages and all sorts of things. The networking you make is wonderful, is the sense of self-worth. And that was huge for me, to learn my own self-worth as someone in higher education, as a woman, as someone who does have a career trajectory, and it was very small trajectory at the time, and now it's a little bit larger, and more long-term. So that self-worth is worth everything. So anybody could benefit from this.
Yeah, that's great.
Kathy, if I may comment on that, Lori's so astute to say that, and I think that's a theme that carries through all of the HERS cohorts. And I would mention to all the prospective applicants that there's a really lovely bridge between the personal and the professional at HERS that I think that they address really well, that allows you to talk about family issues, where you are professionally. And that's a space that I don't think that we have on a daily basis. It really does feel like camp in that way, and it's intense. We'll get to that later, but I just wanted to mention that's an ongoing theme.
Well, those are great reflections. So some of our candidates that are participants. Let me make sure I hope Stephanie got in. Preparing a strong application. So for our campus, we first ask you know, because it is a very large investment. I think it's over $10,000 investment in this program. And we ask that our campus submits an application of interest, and then we review those and we try to select one individual to attend the HERS conference and development program. And so, but then the bad news is after that, then you have to do an application actually to HERS to be accepted. And so I'd like our panelists to talk about what recommendations do you have to do? What things would you suggest in order to prepare a really strong application should they be awarded this opportunity? So Deborah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, you have to start with all of the things that Jenny talked about, right? The passion, the desire to learn, the commitment to the professional development, because the work is hard, right? It's not camp in the sense of a fun camp, right? I mean, it's a great experience. And so once you are committed to doing the work to prepare for it, I think part of the key for me when I was applying was to make sure I had well-defined goals in terms of what I wanted to gain professionally. So I always talk to our faculty about, you know, how they have evolved as a faculty member in all of the areas of evaluation. So in teaching and scholarship and service, how they have evolved. And I think they need to enter that process of applying in that same way. How is this going to help me evolve? What can I contribute because of my experience? What is the impact of that experience? And it really comes down to, after you've kind of defined those things, defining your project, because you do have to submit a proposal for a project that you will be working on throughout the 2-week period. My project actually was a university-wide project that was fundamentally changing the culture at the university. And so part of the strength of my project was in getting buy-in from the people that it would be impacting, right? So if my project was completely successful, I had to have buy-in from the president all the way down to the faculty and staff. And so for me, I did a lot of pre-work in trying to establish who my key partners were in the project and what kind of measurements of success that I would have at each level. And building that project was just a fundamental part of the application process. So I think, you know, you start with the commitment, but then you have to really examine and do some self-assessment as to what you want to get out of it and how you're going to impact the university, because it is a big investment from the university.
Hey, Lori, I'll go to you next. So what would you say were our recommendations for preparing a strong application?
Sure. I think that you want to take what we've said already even, but think about leadership outside of the box and not think about, well, I need to tell them where I want to go next in my career, because even if it asks a question that alludes to that or comes out and flat out ask you what your career mapping or path is, it doesn't mean that they want the set standard of, well, I'm director of something, so I want to be a executive director next, and and so forth and so on. So to think kind of outside the box and explain what that means in terms of your own position and your own career path at this time. But I also would emphasize the project. I can't tell you what my project was on my application, because then once I got there, it changed because I had accepted the position of department chair. So at that point, things had changed in my own personal and professional life. But I'll add to that what Deborah mentioned, in that when you're there, I went back through some of my notes before today of each day of the camp, and in green, I had written different notes or typed different notes in a different color. And in green was what it related to the project, because throughout every session, they were coming back to, how does this affect your project? How does this affect your goals? And so you're constantly coming back to that. So be very mindful of what that project is and what you really want from the experience in terms of that project, because they're going to refer to it and you're going to refer to it all the time. That's a huge piece.
So Lori, you had to pivot quickly. Jenny, so what would you say recommendations of preparing a strong application?
A couple of recommendations that I think might help applicants. Hers just hired maybe 4 or 5 new staff members, so they've had a complete turnover. They're all very high energy people who answer questions pretty quickly. I asked a lot of questions. I wanted to know examples of capstone projects, so I designed mine in response to reading other people's proposals. They were very generous in terms of what they shared. So I think that asking us as panelists for copies of our applications, I think you'd be surprised to find how collegial HERS members are in terms of sharing their applications or their statements. That goes a long way. I mean, I learned that as a grant writer. I've asked many people on campus, can I see a copy of your federal grant? I mean, that's without formal training, that's how I've become successful in that realm. So that's one recommendation, is take advantage of the collegiality of people who've participated in the program, and also ask questions of the committee, because I think that if you're very engaged in the process of applying and ask good questions, they remember. Not everybody does that. So you're becoming part of the community even in the process of asking good questions. And I think that makes a difference.
Good, thank you. So this next question is about thinking back to your experience with the HERS Institute. Could you tell us what resonated most and what was your biggest takeaway? So I'll start with you, Lori. Oops. What resonated most, and what was
I
your
should have
biggest
seen it
takeaway?
coming. You're rotating, but yeah, hit me with the hard question. There's so much that I came away with, but there were more like little snippets. And so it was more the practical application of ideas to assist me in moving forward in my career and understanding, again, that self-worth, and that I can be more than maybe I've given myself credit for. And just like a couple of examples of the idea that women don't apply for jobs unless they're like, they read the list of qualifications and they're 90% sure they have done all that or can do that, versus men who do it at about 40%. Oh yeah, I can learn to do the other stuff. And to just value myself as someone who can learn and grow in a position and do well. But even things like changing my CV so that it's not based on higher ed faculty like it started. That's the first time I did a CV, was to be higher ed faculty. And so to change it to be, well, my goal is to be an administrator next. So how do you change that so that it's still the same information, but it speaks loudly to where you want to go in your career, whatever that path is. So all those practical pieces that we got, one of my favorite times there was what they, at that time, and I know they've changed their format some, so I don't know, Jenny, if they still have these, but they were lounge talks. And so those were in the evening with the faculty there. And so you would just sit around on the floor and in a lounge room, and they would, at Bryn Mawr anyway, that's how it was. And so, they just give you practical advice of where they were in their career and how they got there, but not just how to be a president or a provost or whatever their, stature was. It was more about leadership. How do you evolve to be a better leader, whatever position you're in. So to me, that and the networking, because like I said, you know, I still contact people. We still have a Facebook group. And so just getting and cheering each other on. I mean, we still are cheering each other on, and they're, you know, writing, hey, I'm applying for this position at this university. What do y'all think? Have you ever, you know, applied for something like this? What kind of questions might I, you know, expect from the interview process, and, you know, all of those things, those practical pieces that I could come back. And as I said, I looked at, I know I'm being a little long-winded, when I went through my notes again yesterday and this morning, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did do that. Yay, I checked that off. You know, I came back and I actually implemented that piece as being a department chair for the first year. And so I was so excited that I actually did it and I kept that up. And then there were other pieces that I'm like, oh, I need to revisit this because, you know, it would help me now to look at those pieces.
I love that. I forgot to tell everybody, that was the other thing. So you brought up something really important. The experience is actually you stay in a dorm, right? You stay in a dorm. So not to burst anybody's bubble, you're not going to a resort hotel, you stay in a dorm. But I hope it was nice. I hope it was decent. And it moves around, right? It's not always at the same place? So when you
It's
went,
usually
Lori,
at the same place. I'm actually
Oh.
surprised when Jenny said she was at Mines, because that's my
Uh-huh.
alma mater, first of all.
Yeah.
So there's a little, you know,
yeah, so
but it used to be at DU, the University of Colorado, or I'm sorry, University of Denver, and then at Bryn Mawr. So they must be expanding their locations a bit. And I know they have a format now that you can do like weekends for a certain number of time, and
Yeah.
they've had online because of the pandemic. So I think they're becoming more flexible, as we all are.
Well, Deborah, so now I'm going to punt that question over to you. What resonated most with you, and what was your biggest takeaway?
So Lori did a beautiful job and took some of my ideas too. But so I think the takeaways, I'm going to start with the takeaways, because like Lori, mine was 5 years ago. I still have almost monthly conversations with some of them, right? I mean, we have Zoom meetings where we're talking about where are you, what are you doing, how are you managing this, how are you doing this? So that network that was built was huge for me, and I do use that network to vet ideas as well as job prospects throughout my career. But I would say, when people talk to me about HERS, the biggest impact that HERS had on me was I actually started looking at administrative positions around 2015, and I started applying for positions, just one step up, chairs, you know, potentially dean positions, and I was not getting a lot of bites on that. And I went to HERS. I was recommended to go to HERS. I went to HERS, and the big takeaway really was what Lori was talking about with the CV. So I remember I actually sat down. They had you know, like a search firm representative there. I sat down with the search firm representative and I showed her my CV and I showed her my cover letter. And she looked at my CV and she's like, your CV sucks. I mean, in the most generous way she could do it, right? And I was at Texas State for 24 years, right? I mean, I had been a faculty member for a long time. And I was like shocked that she said that. And she said, it's wonderful if you're a faculty member, right? I mean, it was a standard format, teaching, scholarship, grants, you know, service. It was pages and pages of service. And she said, your CV is great if you want to be a faculty member, but if you want to be an administrator, you need to revise the entire thing. And I literally, after the HERS was over, I was in Denver, which is where I'm from. So I spent 2 days with one of my colleagues that was at HERS with me, and a longtime friend, and we redid my entire CV. And I'm not kidding, the next year I got a dean position, right? And so it was just recognizing who your audience was and what kinds of things that they were going to look at. And so again, even things like service, I had pages and pages of service that I had done over the course of my career. And like all faculty, I was just listed out, right? And one of the things they told me was take your service and divide it into categories, right? So maybe search committees, right? And so when you start your career as a faculty member, you might be serving on the search committee for a colleague, right? Another colleague in the department. But if you look at my CV now, I was serving at those levels at that point. But by the time I left Texas State, even I was serving as on search committees for the VP, right? And so you saw an evolution even in the service of how your leadership developed over the course of your career. And I think when you have long lists, as many faculty do, you lose that evolution and you lose that creation of the service leadership that you have done, right? And so for me, the biggest takeaway was understanding that my CV is not, I have multiple versions now of my CV, right? I have like 4 different versions, but it also impacts what I do now, because every person who goes up for tenure and or promotion in our college, I meet with them before they submit their application, and I review their CV, right? Because that had such an impact on me. And I'm like, think about who your audience is. And we talk about the organization and the structure of the CV, whether they're a lecturer or whether they're applying for a professor, right? That you need to think about that and show your best foot forward. And I think hers did a really excellent job of, as Lori was talking about, showing us how to put our best foot forward. And that's an immense takeaway, because we're not really taught how to do that.
So Jenny, do you have anything to add? What resonated most with you and your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I had so many. I was just thinking that one of them, as a professional who decided to build her career at a single university, I came straight out of graduate school from the University of Oregon and came to our university in 2009. It really helped me understand what was happening across the higher ed landscape, across the country. So there were 62 women in my cohort, representing, I think, probably 35 states. There were a lot of women there from the Cal State system. So I learned a lot about what was happening there. But having women in the group who were from Bowdoin College in Maine, which has a huge endowment, learning about salary structure for her director position versus what was happening at Ohio State really gave me a better understanding of why I was at an HSI and why I want to be at one. In addition to a lot of networking, there's a significant amount of collegial complaining that happens at Hearst, which is really wonderful. I mean, we're all complaining about the same stuff: the budget, leadership issues, the being ignored as women, doing more work. So that was very comforting, but also just on a grander scale. I've, over the years, I've had doubts about should I stay, should I go? It just gave me a lot of more confidence about staying when everyone was talking about leaving and growing. And it made me realize again that, I won't stay at the university forever, but for now it's a very good place for me. And the second thing is that it also made me get much more comfortable being myself as a leader. I think I've had an ongoing imposter syndrome, like many people have, in terms of, well, when I am a leader, I'll have to wear heels like President Mattson. And everybody knows that that's what a leader looks like. And
I'm wearing
there
my
are different
tennis.
kinds
I'm
of
wearing my
leaders.
tennis shoes right now.
And I'm never going to wear 5-inch heels like President Mattson, and that's okay. And that's one of the things that hers reinstills in you, which I think is important.
Thank you. That was great. So I want to leave time for questions. And so I'm going to ask this So if someone's on the fence about applying, what advice would you give them? And so Deborah, I'm going to ask you. Oh, wait, Jenny, you want to answer? You want to be first?
My instant response to that is apply, because even if this program is not a good fit, whatever you write is your pre-application for the next opportunity that is.
I agree. I think that it's too good of an opportunity to ignore, and just going through the experience is beneficial. I mean, so when I got out of HERS, I applied for an ACE fellowship, which some people are familiar with, but it's a year-long residency somewhere else where you're shadowing a leader. I applied for an ACE fellowship, and I applied for a number of academic administrative positions, and I got the ACE fellowship. I actually ended up declining it, but had I not done the HERS application process, I don't think I could have done the ACE fellowship as well, right? And so everything we do at some level has to do with how we articulate our goals, articulate our visions, and that experience cannot be ignored. So I agree with Jenny. If you're on the fence, apply anyway. If you apply and you don't get it, apply next year and do it again, right? I don't think it's a one time or nothing. I think sometimes we get turned down for things, and then we think, well, I'm not able to do this. So then we quit, right? We don't think about doing the next application because we get discouraged. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. We have to keep applying to get the experiences that we want and the goals that we want to achieve. So I agree completely with Jenny. Do it anyway. Talk to us, talk to others that are doing it. I'm happy to, and I'm sure my cohort would be happy to talk to anybody if they want visions from outside of the university. But one of the things I valued at HERS was the fact that the cone of silence concept was really strong at HERS, right? I mean, you could say anything you wanted, and you knew it was a safe space to talk about what was really a concern. And so if you're not feeling that you're in that safe space, wherever you are right now, we can find safe space people to talk to you.
And I think what you just said goes back to something Lori had said earlier. Sorry, Lori, I'm going to hit you next. But something you said about, valuing yourself and saying, I know I can do it and have the positive outlook. So, so to you, Lori, if someone's on the fence, what advice would you give them?
So I agree. There's no harm in applying, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself through the application process, what you write, because I learned, wow, I really do have future career goals, whatever they might be, and they've changed along the way since then. But definitely you learn about yourself just going through that. And I agree with Jenny. It can be a catalyst for others. Since I applied for two things at not the same time, that's not true. So, but before I went to HERS, I ended up applying to two other type of leadership programs. One was Ask You, and one was ACE, and I got in both of those as well, and attended those the following year. Nothing like HERS. Some overlap in some practical things that were shared. And they weren't, all women. It wasn't the ACE Fellow. It was a, like 3-day program, leadership program. But they were beneficial too. And so, but it didn't, because I had already been accepted to HERS, I was like, yeah, I can apply for these others too. What's the harm? The more I learn, the more I go places, will be beneficial to me. And so I think the HERS process definitely helped in facilitating those others. But I do think you learn a lot about yourself just through the application process and what you have to answer and in detail that you're putting forward that you maybe not would have realized about yourself, or maybe you knew, but it's putting it down on paper now. It's actually putting it out there in the world, versus you thinking it in the back of your head or that sort of thing.
So I do have a question that wasn't on my list. And Casey's not here, but when Casey went, Casey did the online program. And so she thinks it would have been better with the in-person program. It was difficult, but she at least got to participate. And but before she went, she actually interviewed, I think, some other women administrators. Did all three of y'all have to do some type of prep work interviewing someone?
I had to interview, I think it was
Yes.
7 leaders.
Seven. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So, and you, some of them are specified. So you had to, for example, talk to the president and the provost, but I did 7 interviews, and that was even a remarkable thing, right? It just learning more about the leadership at my own university that are deeper knowledge than I had before. But I think I ended up doing 7 interviews.
Yeah, I don't remember how many, but the same here. I remember one being this CFO, so I had to interview the CFO at the time. And then you had some choices. I think that so you could pick some different people. They didn't have to be women. In my case, it was just leaders at your university. And so you learned a lot just through those as well. I agree with Deborah. And the idea of that your name now is out there too. So if you want anything or need anything, you're making inroads within your own university that maybe you hadn't had in the past.
And Jenny, did your most recent, you had to interview?
I did. I interviewed everyone in Marcom because that was specific to my project, because I was trying to create a university-based media center, which is still in process. Central space.
Which we'll still have a hopes for, right? That's
Right. I mean, these things take time, but that's such an intentional pre-work assignment. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk to leaders, and Kathy was on my list, and they give you specific questions that you're supposed to ask your CFO. They want you to talk to your president. So I think I did 3. So I spent the majority of my time with David Peisers to learn what the advancement arm of the university, what was happening in that area.
okay. Well, at this time, I'm going to turn our participants. We welcome anybody to ask questions of our panel. And so if you'd like to, Adriana, I think, are there any in the chat? Well, I don't see any.
There was one earlier, and it was just asking about the CVs. They were asked whether or not, it was after Dean Feeks had mentioned the CV situation. And she asked if you were provided with CV examples of other administrators. And Lori responded yes, but I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. Anyone?
I can just, since I was commenting so much on that, I don't recall that I even asked. I have no doubt that they would have given it to me, but what happened with me was they picked, I think we had a cohort of about 80. I was trying to remember the number when Jenny was saying that what her size was. I think we had about 80, and there was an opportunity for about 10 of us to have an intense session with the search firm representative. And so I was selected for one of those, which is what was really beneficial. So she worked very closely with me in kind of outlining how she felt it should be. But I have no doubt I could have reached out to anybody and they would have shared their CVs. Many of them were going through the same experience that I was, that people hadn't really revised their CVs in that group. And I would also share, I'm happy to review and or share my CV with anybody who asks for it. Just let me know. And I'm, like I said, I go through that with my faculty all the time.
You said you had at least 4. different
Yeah,
ones.
well, okay. And tell me which one you want me to go through. I'm assuming my administrative CV. The other one is quite tedious, I will say.
So I'll give a plug here for a program we had this past year, and Deborah helped us with it. We had a program about marketing yourself, right? About, and then we had the breakout workshops, and one of the workshops was about looking at your CV or your resume, looking at how you're presenting yourself and your experiences on paper, and how you do it well, and to sell yourself and to market yourself. And so if people are interested in that, we may bring it back in the spring. We'd love to hear what y'all think about that. Any other questions? We're getting some, if y'all look at the chat, we're getting some nice comments from the panel, thanking you and appreciating.
Elisa had a question that I think I can address. She says, what can you share about the similarities and differences in the experience for staff versus faculty? I think you mean in terms of participating in HERS, correct, Elisa? So, okay. So I have a director level position. I have a master's degree, and HERS actually had a completely interesting outcome for me, in that I met 3 coaches, communication coaches. So my discipline is communications. I've had staff positions at the university, and I've had faculty. I used to be 50-50, so 50% staff and 50% faculty. So I'm very familiar with the experience of both staff and faculty positions at public universities. I think it's a great place for staff. There's a lot of applicants, and at least in my cohort, who had dual, sometimes even 3 job titles. And I think that it's a great fit for someone at my level or another staff position, because I think what's happening across universities, both private and public, is that these hybridized positions are becoming more popular. And leadership is happening in both realms. But I mentioned the communication coaches that I met who came in as speakers, because they really gave me sort of a new trajectory. I found out as part of HERS that one of my skills is negotiation, not just salary negotiation, but helping other women leverage themselves. And so I started doing, informally, I just started coaching people at HERS at downtime, and people were coming to me. So I think you'll find that either as a faculty member or as a staff member that you will develop strengths that you didn't even know that you had. So you should not limit yourself because you are not in line to become the next president of College X. I think that there's a broad range of potential pathways for different women in this program. Does that make sense?
And the 2 weeks that I experienced, and I'm sure it was the same for Deborah and Jenny, but they did a great job. HERS did a great job of, they mixed us around. So, you had time during each day that you were meeting with different groups. So sometimes it was a group of people in similar positions that you were in. Sometimes it was in a group that was helping, that you had a similar project that you were working on, and you'd work on the project. Similar size universities that you were at. So at different times during the days of the 2 weeks that you're there. And by the way, I don't think anybody's mentioned this, but it is a day. I mean, the day is, you start with breakfast, you eat breakfast together, and you go straight after breakfast to your meetings, and they're not really meetings, to the experience. You eat lunch together, you eat dinner together. You may have, I think we had like 1 hour break before dinner or something, but I mean, you're ending, and then you have homework to do for the next day. The only time that we had off was the middle weekend between the 2 weeks, that you had Saturday off, so Friday night, I think, and Saturday, but then you were back for Saturday dinner, and Sunday you were starting up again. So, I mean, it's intense. It's intense, definitely. But during that time, you're meeting everybody, and I had 68 people, 69, because it was 68 others. So 69 in my cohort, and I met all of them and spent time with all of them at some point, substantive time, not just, hi, how you doing? I mean, so yeah, it's intense, but you do meet a lot of different people and learn so much from all the groups that you work in.
Well, and I would add, plus you're in suites in the dorms, right? So you got to spend the evenings with them as well, which we did. But part of that is the joy. I mean, I enjoy going to conferences and going to the sessions and things like that. But much of the meat of the conference happens in the evenings when you're having dinners and, a drink at the bar or whatever you're doing in the evenings. And that's true at hers too, right? That some of those best conversations that I had were outside of the formal settings because they did give you opportunities to interact outside. Even things like, they went to Red Rocks and did yoga. And I mean, they did a lot of outside activities as well that you could engage in with your colleagues. And so it's not, you're not just sitting in a room listening. You are out actually engaging at every level with this community.
So does anybody have I'm not seeing any, I don't, oh, maybe I haven't made it there. Any other questions? I'm trying to see if there's anything.
There aren't any other questions, but I did want to, I know in talking with all of you that I'm sure you would be more than happy to talk if somebody had more questions or something like that. I think that it would be okay for them to reach out to you. That's kind of a question, I guess, but I know all of you are very excited about hers and then your experience as well. So great. So just putting that out there for people to know. And then Kathy, did you want to talk about the timeline?
Yes, so in wrapping up, the HERS application for our campus is due September 9th. And then that allows us internally to look at the candidates and make a recommendation to the president for supporting. And then we do that because I believe the deadline for the application to the actual HERS Institute is in October. And we want to allow, as they've told you about building your application and the things you have to put in, we want to allow at least 2 weeks for the selected candidate to have that time in order to complete their application, their full application. So the HERS application for our campus to select a participant is due September 9th. And it's out there on our Women at Work page. And then it's a pretty simple fillable form. I think it's called a JOP form. And then, but please mark that it's for the HERS Institute. So yes, that's how we do it on our campus, the process. And so are there any questions about that? Or, and the women that review these applications are our steering committee for Women at Work. So there's a handful of us that look at this and make the final recommendations to the president.
Jacob put the application in the chat. So there's a link to
Oh, okay, good.
in the chat.
Yeah, good. And it made me think of something else, Adriana, but then I'm having a senior moment. It left me. That's September.
It's Martha.
Hey, Martha.
Hi, I just wanted to mention to, I guess, the people that are on and listening, one of the things we've talked about at the Women at Work Committee is that, as you can tell from what Jenny and Lori have explained, it's pretty competitive. I mean, that we do get a lot of applications, so we don't want it to be that if you apply and you don't have to apply again. A lot of times with these types of programs, as I'm sure these ladies can attest to, it might be several applications that you have to put in, but if you're If you're persistent, then that does show something too. So we don't want you to be discouraged because it is, as Kathy mentioned, an expensive program. So we can't really afford to send more than we probably would like to send. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider, continuing to apply if it's something that interests you. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think I remember now my senior moment left. So we have several things coming up that really exciting. There's different things that are opportunities. They're not as intense or as this program, but we have a conference for the Hispanic Women's Network that's coming up here in San Antonio. And so we're going to be looking to see if we have anybody interested in going to that. We also have the Texas Women's, maybe it's Texas Women in Higher Ed, and they have an annual conference. And so that's something we put out there, and we encourage individuals to seek out and let us know if they'd like to go to something like that, and we'll help support some registration fee money for that. And then we just hope to expand the opportunities to go off campus too, to our Women at Work group. I'm very involved in a group called SACUBO, which is Southern Association College and Business Officers. And we have a women's forum every year in Atlanta in February. And so that's another one I'd like to see if we have people that have an interest, then maybe we can help facilitate, at least pay their registration fee. Yes, Deborah. You
I
have
was
something-
also going to add that we have the Texas Women in Higher Education Conference, and that's been a really beneficial one to attend. It's every year, usually I think February or
April?
March, right?
Okay.
But in the
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah.
But that's a nice one because it's local and there's lots of input. I saw that Elena asked about training. There are lots of training opportunities available. Some of them are on in campus and some of them are off campus, but maybe collecting them would be a good idea. I don't know how well they're collected.
Well, on our application, we have several boxes of different things that we know are available outside the university and that we can help facilitate. And so it's on our form that's on the website. But as far as leadership, we also have through the Women's Chamber of Commerce, right, Martha? We have a group, and we have a couple of things there. There's a transformational leadership program, and we usually send about 2 people to that, sometimes more. Then we also have one that's more geared towards business, and it's called the Bloomberg Business Series. And so those are some things, but so those things are available on our website. And if someone has an interest, we just hope they'll fill out the form and let us know so that next time those things come up, we know who wants to do them or attend them, participate in them. And then Martha, I'm going to put a shameless plug for our leadership program that we started last year in fall of 21. And we had a cohort, and it's a 3-year program, and it is all about leadership. It starts off at some very basic information, and it ultimately leads to the final year is all about how to run a university. And so you get gamuts of how, about business operations and things about legislative and governmental relations. So if you're really interested in being an administrator at a university, the program is really beneficial because it's going to lead you from the basics of management all the way up to the running of a university. So,
Kathy, we have a question from Elena.
okay, Elena.
She has her
Sorry,
hand
I'm
up.
asking all the questions.
That's okay, Elena. Great. Ask
I
questions.
just wanted to know if there's, you mentioned a form, but is there a list on the website that we can look at the different opportunities locally and nationally? Like, you mentioned the Texas Women in Higher Education and a couple of other programs. So
Yeah.
Is there a list that we could go, or you can share on the chat, or that we can go
Sure.
at somewhere?
On our Women at Work website, we do have, it's under our nomination form, and the nomination form has the different areas that you might be interested in. So it has a list of about 7 different programs that we're familiar with, and that we would love to help get a person connected with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else? I want to be very mindful of your time. Any other last questions? Going. Because I want to get everybody out and back to whatever you need to be at next. And so it's 12:57. And we did record this presentation. We also are going to try to do a better job this year of recording things so that those that just really can't attend at the time that we have it, you at least have the luxury of watching it later on. And so we've recorded this, and Jacob Martin in my office, who's been so helpful and everything, and I thank you, Jacob, putting things together. He's going to try to make sure we load things up on our website so people can find them and go back and look at them and watch. Anything else?
Just a reminder to everyone, the application for HERS is not as much work as your annual self-evaluation, or if you're a staff member, the work that you have to do annually. It's easier, so you should apply.
That's cute. That's cute. Yep. It's an appropriate time of year to be talking about evaluations. So I know I'm behind getting mine done.
You're not alone.
I'm sure I'm not alone. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy. I think I don't know if we're gonna have more rain or what. But it kind of looks pretty gray at my house right now. So have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for doing
Bye.
it, Kathy.
Thank you, all of our
Bye.
panelists
Thank
too.
you. Thank you, everybody.